I don't know if this man is taking a victory lap today for being the second to this story, because he re-reported this story after Florio reported this story, and Ben Volin is vindicated today. A lot of people came after him. This is a nonsense story. It's not true that Tom Brady was almost a Miami Dolphin. So, Ben, now that you have weathered this turbulence, and thank you for joining us. How bad was it, people attacking your reporting when you were saying, hey, this thing was set up, it should be getting more attention, Tom Brady was going to be a Miami Dolphin?
Not any worse than it has been in the past when reporting on Deflategate and Robert Kraft and Aaron Hernandez and just the whole Patriots. I mean, everyone in the NFL hates the Patriots. So social media is nasty. You're well aware of that, Dan. And there's always a lot of negative criticism and a lot of negativity thrown your way. So, yeah, a lot of people in Dolphin land chose not to believe this. But thank you for the NFL for coming out with everything yesterday and vindicating it, I guess. And it's a crazy story. It's one of those cases, Dan, I think, where truth is stranger than fiction. And it's wild. And people, you know this, people choose to believe what they want to believe in this kind of post-truth society now. And people didn't want to believe that Brady was doing this, and the Dolphins were all in. They want to believe the myth of Tua. But it's all very true. And you know, but what's interesting to me is it's being couched as the Dolphins tampered with Brady, and the Dolphins are the ones that get punished here. But this is, you know, it takes two to tango on this one. And Brady was flirting with the Dolphins all season in 2019, starting in training camp. It's not like it happened at the end of the season. He was talking to Bruce Beal all throughout the season, and then Beal would relay the conversations back to Ross. So Brady was just as culpable in this as well. And up here in Boston, I don't think it's making him look very good for him to be so distracted and have his mind elsewhere during that final season in Foxborough.
Would you say this is a bannable affair? Should the NFL ban Tom Brady for life, Ben? In your journalistic opinion, of course.
No, I'm sure I don't know if Dolphins fans should root for that, because Brady still might come there next year. But no, I mean, I do think it's almost worse than Deflategate in a sense. I mean, the football air pressure thing, I think is pretty clear, didn't affect the competition. And who knows how much this affected Brady during that 2019 season. It was not a good year for him or the Patriots. He talked all year about how miserable he was. He was the most miserable 8-0 quarterback. They fell apart in the second half. The offense wasn't good. Who knows? Was Bruce Beal planting some negative thoughts in Brady's head? How distracted was he? So I don't know if it's certainly not a bannable offense. And the NFL, they can't do anything because tampering is only a team punishment. But it doesn't make Brady look very good. And he certainly was distracted that final year, I think. And if he's flirting with the Dolphins, who knows how many other teams he's talking to as well. I think that's something that I've considered a lot too in the last day or two.
What do you regard as the most interesting parts of yesterday, the news that broke yesterday?
First, this revelation that, I mean, we all kind of knew, we first knew that Brady and the Dolphins were talking this past offseason when technically he was under contract with the Bucs. And we knew through the Brian Flores lawsuit that the Dolphins tried to set up these chance meetings at the yacht club after the 2019 season, you know, in like February, a month before free agency began. To me, not a big deal on that stuff. But the fact that it started in training camp, August of 2019, literally the same time that Brady is signing a new one-year deal with the Patriots, and his first media availability, he's talked about how focused he is and locked in, and that's what the team requires of me, and I'm going to give them nothing less than my full attention. And he's flirting with the Dolphins at the same time. So I thought that was pretty fascinating. And to me, the fact that they cleared Stephen Ross on the tanking allegations was a little curious at best. I mean, they're like, well, you know, he may have offered Brian Flores $100,000 per loss, but, you know, he was only joking and he shouldn't have been taken seriously. It's like, I guess, okay. I mean, he's the boss and he's saying this stuff. I think if the NFL had come down on Ross for the tanking, it seems like it would have potentially exposed them to some all kinds of legal liability. the competition of the game, was it pure and antitrust and things of that nature. So I think the NFL wanted to clear Ross of the tanking allegations and then maybe come down a little bit harder on the tampering. So that to me was an interesting outcome yesterday.
So you're saying they were incentivized to not do an impartial investigation, that they're incentivized to arrive at the conclusion before they've investigated it?
Certainly that is an incentive for them. The tanking thing is bad for the NFL. They don't want to open that can of worms. So there's definitely a lot of thought that they cleared the Dolphins on the tanking for their own liability and for legal reasons, and then maybe came down a little bit harder on the tampering with a first-round pick, a third-round pick. Stephen Ross was removed from all his committees, which doesn't sound like a big deal, but he was on some of the most important ones in the NFL, the finance committee, NFL media, international, gambling. So they stripped him of all that stuff. They really punished him and I think have publicly shamed him with this episode, but they really protected him, and it could have been a lot worse because they frankly admit that there was some talk of tanking. But that Stephen Ross, he shouldn't be taken seriously. And I've been around Stephen Ross. He does speak off the cuff a lot and say things that he probably shouldn't be saying, but there certainly seemed to be a spirit of tanking that 2019 season.
But wait a minute, though, Ben. The idea that this would be quote unquote cleared of tanking and that Stephen Ross would take some sort of victory lap in his statement on cleared on tanking when this is a wall-to-wall shame, and it is clear that much like the mafia boss says not to kill somebody, but says, hey, I got a little bit of a problem with so-and-so, and then they end up dead, that Stephen Ross didn't have to put his name on the serious parts of this and then got scared when Brian Flores put in writing a letter, the coach of a team put in writing so that there would be a paper trail. Hey, this kind of feels like tanking. Like you shouldn't be trying to accentuate at all turns that the draft is more important than winning games, Ben. Like I don't feel like he was totally cleared on tanking. I feel like it was made to look that way.
I think that's a good way of putting it too. I think that's probably just a more forceful way of putting. I want to see if I can find here's the press release. I mean, they do say the investigation conclusively established the Dolphins did not intentionally lose games during the 2019 season. I mean, that's probably because of Flores. Flores stepping in.
They would have been tanking if Flores hadn't ended up being defiant to his boss and ending up not with a job and with a lawsuit and a paper trail. They would have been tanking.
Yes, yes. I think that is a good conclusion to draw from this. And but the NFL, yes, you're right. They're just trying to sweep it under the rug. The NFL is saying, well, there may have been thought of tanking, and Stephen Ross may have said this, but he was only joking. It was not to be taken seriously.
Ben,
that's literally what they said.
We cannot,
I'm not saying
no,
it's
I
credible.
know, but as a media, we cannot have in a courtroom a defense of he was just joking. Like that doesn't work in law.
Welcome for Trump.
Well, that's a good point. So no, I mean, I think you and I agree here, Dan. I'm not saying the NFL's explanation is credible. That's just what they're saying. And I think yesterday there's so much that came out. They kind of bombarded us with all this news that it does kind of cloud that point that you're making, that Stephen Ross did try to lose games intentionally. And Brian Flores is the one that stood in the way of it. And he was so concerned that he put it in writing, and he started planning right then and there in his first season. One day I might have to sue this team. Like I might have to fight legally against this team because it's going to end poorly. And good for Brian Flores for standing his ground. He won 5 out of his last 9 games that year, ruined the Dolphins' chances of getting Joe Burrow. Good for Brian Flores. And I think there were a lot of people, probably myself included, who wondered if Brian Flores was getting the right, advice when he filed the lawsuit initially, and was he really hurting his career? And I think you look at him now. I mean, what player wouldn't want to play for this guy? I mean, what a leader, what a man of good integrity and morals. And I think he'd be a terrific leader and is only coming out looking better throughout this whole thing. So.
And totally forgotten if the Dolphins start 4-0 and have an electrifying offense where he will get blamed for things. And put this on the poll, Guillermo, is the best or is the most winning Brian Flores will do a good for Brian Flores from Ben Volin? Is that because he does not have the job, the power he used to have. He's embroiled in a fight against the lawyers of the NFL, which God help anybody who had to do something like that.